All right, Don, would you like to introduce yourself to the people that are listening to the podcast and people on the panel here?
Well, yes, thanks for the opportunity. My name is Dohn Thornton. I am known as Don, the short sale guy on my real estate career. I'm also known as a senior trust specialist because over the last 8 months, I started educating people on the lessons that I've learned over the years about how to legally reduce your taxes to pretty much almost zero and get 100% lawsuit-proof asset protection as a bonus.
Wow, that's a big thing. Now, what got you into doing all that? Like, what was your early career like? Let's say because we got a lot of people here that are listening to this. They're like the age of 18 to 26, and they're like, man, I don't even know what to do, but I really want to get into investing and making a lot of money. So, what stages were you at? Were you at 18? Were you like, yeah, I'm definitely going to be a tax consultant?
No, 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 no. Listen. I didn't know my butt from a hole in the ground when I was 18. I had no idea what I was going to do. When I was 25, I didn't know what I was going to do. I ended up going to Finland in my early 20s, and that was a life-changing experience for me because first of all, I learned Finnish, and getting becoming fluent in a foreign language is like a just opened my eyes up to opportunities I had no idea about, how to do that. And then I decided, you know what, I was into languages, and I said, I'm going to become a Russian language specialist. So I went back home, applied, got into school, I did my, couple of years of college. And then I said, I need to get to Russia to be fluent. It was still the Soviet Union at the time. And so I applied to work at the embassy. I had to wait for a year to get my security clearance. Went over there on a 2-year contract, washed toilets for 18 months till I got my Russian up, and then they promoted me to consular section, and I came home absolutely fluent, and I was able to test out of pretty much almost all my Russian language uh, degree, and then I went back. Everything opened up. Next thing you know, Russian language specialist, State Department gone. And I stayed in Russia for the next 15, 20 years. And I did a bunch of stuff. I was just searching. I had no idea. I mean, I found 16 millimeter movie cameras in a
Mhm.
Russian warehouse. I picked up for like $11 a piece. I bought 100 of them just because they were so cheap. Packed up, I think, four of them in a suitcase and flew to LA and just started going to film schools and started doing presentations. And I came back from California with about $18,000 worth of checks.
Damn.
Opened up a bank account, started a business, flew back to Russia, and started doing, started exporting from Russia to America. And had about a business for about 5 years where I was importing exporting cinematography equipment, and it was awesome.
Wow.
And then they ran out of stock, and so I had here I am, like 25, negotiating with generals with the Ministry of Defense in Moscow to get them to start the production of their movie cameras up again. I negotiated an agreement with Eastman Kodak for them to promote my 60 millimeter movie cameras, for them to help promote their 60 millimeter film. Everything was perfect. We had a price, $75. It worked. It wasn't 11, but it worked.
Yeah.
And then we came to sign the paperwork, and they said, "No, we've seen you making money. We want $350." I said, "I sell them for $350. That's your problem." And I said, "That's not going to work." So next thing you know, my business down the toilet. So
And then
uh,
what
you know,
happened after that? Like a lot of people, they're like, oh man, if I once your business like stops, like what is there to do? Like, uh,
Well, you adjust. And what I did was I realized there was a need. At the time in the 90s, there was a lot of foreign investment going into Russia. They had a lot of expats going over, a lot of Canadians, a lot of Brits, a lot of Americans going over to Russia, and they were in joint ventures. They started, they were there to represent their company, and they didn't. They were trying to learn Russian, but I could see that the typical way that Russians teach Russian to foreigners, it wasn't working. I had learned Russian already. I had developed these shortcuts for how to learn the grammar pretty well. So I said, you know what, there's a niche here. So this is right around Thanksgiving. I said, I started offering some services to some expats, and they said, "Oh my gosh, we love what you do. Do you have a textbook?" I didn't have a textbook. So I said, yes, I will. It's going to be published after New Year's. Well, we can start up. So I went back to America, and I literally for 2 weeks, 10 hours a day, I wrote and wrote and wrote a textbook, and I wrote a vocabulary book. And so I don't know. I went back with 2 suitcases full of books. I had like about, I don't know, maybe 100 something. And the next thing you know, I'm getting paid to teach these CEOs or head of mission foreigners, and I'm making 15, $20,000 a month doing
Wow.
that. So I mean, I adapted. I mean, I represented a company that made this soil stabilization thing where it was based on termites, how they build these hugely rock solid huge mounds, right? Because
Hmm.
there's an enzyme in their saliva, and this company in America, they had, I don't know, synthesized it to where they could do that. So I spent 6 months going back from and forth from Russia to Baku, sharing planes, literally on Azerbaijan Air, sharing a seat with a pig. That happened more than once. People were flying livestock back and forth between Baku, Azerbaijan, and Moscow. I mean, but you know what? I got a contract. I got a contract, and we did five miles worth of road for International Oil Consortium. And we made some nice money, but you know what? I could tell towards the end of the '90s that it was all drying up. There wasn't much there, and the Russians were pushing all the foreigners out, and so I had been married by the time that time and had a couple kids, and I just said, you know what, we're going to have to try something else. And so, I went back to America. I went to my wife, my sister lived in Orlando, and she
Hmm.
says, come to Orlando and check things out. And so I did, and I got a job working for a company that made pipeline inspection equipment for sewers and water pipes. And the first thing they did was send me back to Russia. So we flew all the way, took the family back over to Moscow, and I did that for a couple of years and put together a consortium of American, British, Canadian, and Russian companies to start doing rehabilitating water pipes. And we got a contract for the city of St. Petersburg. We're going to do like 40 kilometers worth of work, and we're going to make about, I don't know, $20 million on it. And my cut was going to be $1 million was my commission. My American company pulled the plug. You know what? What if our equipment doesn't work?
Yeah.
I said, I'm sorry, can I cuss in this
Yeah,
podcast?
you can. Yeah, you can.
Those motherfuckers, why in the world did you not think of that when we first started this? That's right. So they fired my ass. Okay.
Wow.
So I was about ready. I was literally a couple of weeks away from getting my first, $1 million installment. Not, I mean, $250,000. Signing the contract and getting the initial funds wired, and I was fired. And so, and just really just cut us off at the knees. And, my son had been bored. He had some health issues. We really needed the money. And it was like I had to go home. And so I left my family. I went back to Orlando, and I just told myself, come hell or high water, I will never work for anybody again, ever.
Wow.
And so I had to think, how do I do that? And for me, it was real estate. I thought to myself, you know what? There's investors out there, they're making money. I just had to find the right niche.
Hmm.
And it took me about 2 years from the time I made a decision until I got my first check. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to go with the herd where they're going. I want to be out here. So what is it nobody likes to do that I could establish myself quickly, and that was it's the most profitable. And I heard about short sales, where if you have a property where a homeowner, let's say, owes $250,000 on the mortgage, but it's only worth maybe 200,
Hmm.
so they're upside down on their mortgage or underwater. That has no value to other real estate investors.
Yeah.
For me, I could negotiate with the bank, and if the bank said, okay, if I know I can sell it for 200, then I'm going to try to get the bank to let me buy it for 150. And so by trial and error, it took me about 6 months, beating my head against the wall, and I finally figured it out. And I was literally supplementing my food by 7-Eleven hot dogs and nachos, because I had a gas card
Yeah.
for 7-Eleven, so I would sometimes have to do that. And then in February 17, 2004, I got my first closing. It was $13,067.92. I framed that one. And a week later, I sold one for 25, and then I went from eating big bite hot dogs to making almost $1 million in 2004. And I
Wow.
was off. I was off and running at that point in time. And then, of course, when the crash hit and Great Recession, I was making millions at the time. So, I mean, I rode that wave for about 18 more years, and until COVID hit.
Yeah.
And then COVID wiped me out, wiped my business out, because my main source of short sales was the foreclosures from the courts.
Hmm.
But they
They
for
stop
almost
foreclosures.
2 years there were no foreclosures.
Yeah.
So here I am, 20-year veteran, and all of a sudden, I got used to making a lot of money. All of a sudden, it was like the tap was turned off. So it's like, okay, now what do I do? And I thought I had to do a an inventory of what I knew, because I'm a little bit older now. I'm in my late 50s. I'm not in my mid 30s when I first started. I don't have as much energy, but I know that after getting a degree in the School of Hard Knocks in the Russian campus, I knew that you can always find something, but you just have to be creative and look for it. I thought to myself, what assets do I have up here that I could offer to a wider audience that don't have to do with short sales? And I said, well, I know about this tax strategy. I'm sure other people want to know about it. And so I dove into that. And all of a sudden, it was just like I realized that, gosh, so many people don't want to pay their taxes. I realized that before,
Yeah.
but it resonates with people. It really does. And I went from zero. Literally, I had 0 followers on TikTok. I just started making videos, and I tell you, by the end of the summer, I had 60,000 followers. This guy on TikTok, right? 60,000 followers. And I started getting people just saying, let us know how to, we want this. It's all has to do with the trust, you know, and we want this trust and so forth. And then TikTok booted me off. They banned me because
Really?
yeah, I guess they feel like people saving on their taxes is a bad thing. So they cut me off the knee. So I started up again. But in the meantime, I found so many creative solutions about stuff. I mean, I was able to get a Google grant for my business, and so now I get $10,000 worth of free Google ads every month forever. And I'm pushing the trust and the tax strategy on the Google grant. I'm on a lot of podcasts now, so I mean, it just keeps growing at its own pace, and it's going really well. And so, you know, I'm almost to the point now where I don't know if I'll go back to short sales ever, because eventually they're going to come back. But I'm thinking to myself, why would I want to do that when this resonates so much better with people?
Yeah.
So I mean, the only people that I can't help are W-2 employees, and they're slaves anyway. I reject the W-2 employee business model anyway. Now, there's just people out there that they love that, they like the security, but you're never going to be wealthy with that.
Hmm.
If you really want true wealth, you have to do something on your own, and otherwise you're just a glass ceiling there. Not just for women, it's for anybody in W-2. So so I mean, it's just I like this better. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
That's kind of,
Some definitions here. What a lot of people are probably wondering. So, what is a Google grant? Like, how do you get that obtained?
well, Google has a program. They've had it for, I don't know, 30 years, I guess, where as a nonprofit, you can apply, and they will give you, pay per click, $10,000 worth of pay per click ads every month for free, as long, but it's through your nonprofit. So what I was able to figure out is that, a lot of companies have their own nonprofit, meaning,
Hmm.
and when you think of nonprofit, you automatically think of charities.
Yeah.
Actually, you can have an educational foundation or a nonprofit, and all you do is, because every company has their own um, content, right? Their marketing content. They have to educate people on what they're doing and why they're doing it so important, and why you should be interested in whatever they're doing. Well, all you have to do is just set up a nonprofit, an educational nonprofit, and now you can qualify. It's not easy to get the grant, trust me. It's not. It took me about 2 months to figure it out,
Hmm.
but you can get the grant. And then once you have it, then you drive people to your educational content about what you're doing. Like in my case, it's like I educate them on how they can
stop paying taxes or paying
I
less
don't give
tax.
them. I don't give them the cookie. I don't give them the whole
Yeah.
cookie, but enough to get them interested. And then, of course, on my website, there's all these calls to action to press to get more information. That sends them to my for-profit business,
Hmm.
and so I transition. So it's the I give them information from the nonprofit side, and it transitions over to the
Ah, I got you.
for-profit. You
And
see?
how do you open a I guess an educational nonprofit? Is it like a certain you do you like title it like, oh, this LLC makes no money or whatever? How would
No,
you
it's
define it?
yeah. I mean, it's just you just have to. I mean, you can do. I mean, you can do them. It's not as. I mean, just don't do the charity.
Hmm.
Don't do anything with a charity because it takes too. It's just you just got to jump through so many hoops and do it. But I mean, if anyone's interested, I'd be glad to talk to you about it. I mean, just refer them to me. I know how to do it. But
Okay.
I don't think I think that there's a misconception out there that a lot of people think that well you have to have a charity to do it, and you don't have to do that. You can get this. You can do it this way. So I got that behind me. I've got the social media that I do. I'm on podcasts and do webinars and it's just a matter of just getting out in front of people because when you explain to them, like say for example, uh, if you're a lot of I talk to a lot of people at IT,
Mhm.
and they're 1099 contractors, and they're getting killed with taxes because you don't have any write-offs.
Yeah.
So I mean, I talk to people and they're telling me, it's like they're making like $300,000, $200,000, and they're paying like 30, $50,000 worth of taxes, sometimes more. And then I explain to them, you don't have to do that. I can get you a trust, and you can work this to where you can use an LLC as a pass through, and we can create two more major expenses for your LLC, and that's going to bring your LLC's tax liability down to almost nothing. And then all the money that we're converting from active income to passive income for the trust, that can all be permanently deferred with the trust. And it's just like they're going like, oh my gosh, really? And it's like, yeah, this is all legal, you can do this.
Hmm.
And it surprises me that not as many people know about it you
Yeah.
know
So,
and
can you rephrase that because I guess it comes into like this is now the whole pattern of not paying somewhat a lot of taxes here. So you would have a trust like on top, and then you would have what below it?
okay, well, look, if you don't, I'll go into more detail if you
Okay,
want.
go ahead.
All right, so basically there is a trust called a non-grantor, irrevocable, complex, discretionary spendthrift trust.
It's complicated.
That's the trust. Okay.
Okay.
So, so every word in the name of the trust is a pillar of the trust. You have to have all of those pillars for it to work.
Hmm.
Okay? The trust itself has been around for some version of it has been around ever since the U.S. was established. Its roots come from England, and it's obviously changed throughout centuries. But at its core is that it's a contract, and it's always based on contract law. In England, it was based on English common law, and here it's based on contract law. And what that means is that it's a contract, and I think it was like Article 1, Section 10 of the U.S. Constitution states that no state shall impair the obligation of contract. So the core of our democracy and our free enterprise system is the sanctity of contract. And the government can't get involved in a contract between this person, unless they're committing fraud, right?
Yeah.
Or the criminal activity, right? But that's the basis of this. So um, you cannot set your own trust up. Someone else has to set up for you. So it's a non-grantor trust. And so what happens is that you have a third party that sets it up for you and names you trustee, and then that person resigns.
Yeah.
So now you have a trust that's already it's made up not by you, so it's non-grantor. I'm the trustee, so now I can control everything. It's irrevocable because you, as trustee, want to sell all of your assets into the trust irrevocably. So you don't use it as a holding pin to say, okay, I'll transfer this asset into here, but then I can go ahead and transfer it out whatever I want. That doesn't work. IRS won't allow that to happen. Once that trust is formed and it's its own entity, you sell it into the trust. That's it. The trust owns it. You can't take it back.
Hmm.
Okay. So that's why it has to be irrevocable. And then it has to be discretionary because as a trustee, you have 100% power to manage the assets on behalf of the beneficiaries. So your word is law in a trust. You control everything. So you no longer own your assets, but you control them. Okay. And the final pillar is spendthrift trust, and that's where you get the asset protection. This is why the ultra wealthy have used this thing even before the US tax code was implemented in the 1930s, because it's basically you put your assets in there, the government can't get to you. These lawsuits can't get to you. I mean, have you heard of eminent domain?
Yes.
That is okay. This trust can stop the government from eminent domain.
Really?
It can't. It will stop it. If the government comes to you, say you have a ranch, and the government says we're going to build an interstate right through your land,
Hmm.
and here's our price. Take it or leave it. And if you don't take it, we're going to do an eminent domain lawsuit, and we're going to take it from you. Well, with it, if your assets, if that land is in your trust, this trust with a spendthrift provision, they will have to circle around your around your ranch. They cannot get that too. So that and basically means, you no slip and fall lawsuits, no predatory lawsuits. When you're a business person, you start making money, you're a target.
Yeah.
People will come after you. And so, and listen, I've had people try to sue me before. And I just tell the attorney whoever, I mean, it hasn't happened a lot, but it's just, a couple times. It's just like, look, just, hey, whatever. I get it. Do some due diligence, because this is a trust. All my assets are in this trust, and it has a spendthrift provision. So, I mean, just gonna let you know that.
Okay.
See ya. Never hear from them again. So anyway, that's the trust.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you have a 1090, we're going back to our 1099 IT guy, right? So you don't have any write-offs. So you're getting money from the company. Now, if you're smart, you've got an LLC. So you perform your services for maybe one or two, five, seven different clients. Okay.
Yeah.
They're going to pay you into your LLC, which is fine. There's a little bit of asset protection there, not that much, but there's some. And then you pay yourself a salary, or you do however you want to do it. But that's the end and beginning for you is that LLC, and that's where you're getting hit so hard with taxes. So here's how you do it, and it's gonna blow your mind when you see how simple this is. But the trust allows you to do this with an LLC. So if I'm an IT person, maybe I don't have any assets yet. I've got a car. You can sell your car in there. If you have some real estate, if you own your property, your residence, you can do the same thing. You can sell it into the trust. So the trust now owns it. You're the trustee. But for the most part, guys like that, women like that, your assets are up here.
Yeah.
This is what you know. And so you literally do a bill of sale and list all the assets you have in your head, and you sell them to the trust. So now the trust owns your assets, intangible assets, right? Okay. So you make the trust a 90% member of your LLC.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, since you yourself have sold your assets into the trust, or now the trust intellectual property, your LLC can no longer generate revenue because it has no access to your assets. They're in the trust, right?
Yeah.
So what you're going to do is you're going to lease those assets to your LLC. The trust leases those assets to the LLC. So now your IT person, let's say the IT person rocks. He or she are making $1 million pre-tax net income, right?
Yeah.
So that's what the IRS is going to go after, or your CPA is going to tell you how much you owe. Now, if you make over $165,000 of ordinary income, you're taxed at 32%. So if you got $1 million as net income, you're going to write a check of $320,000 to Uncle Sam.
Oh yeah.
That's
That's
huge.
that
That's
is
huge,
huge.
right? Okay. Well, what we're going to do here is we're going to create two more enormous expenses for the LLC. The first one is the lease payment, right? We've got a lease now between the LLC and the trust.
Yeah.
Now the IRS will allow up to 70% of your LLC's net income to be used as a lease payment. So if we have $1 million as our net income with the LLC,
Yeah,
70%
700,000.
of that is $700,000.
Yeah.
That's going to go over to the trust as a lease payment. So now we've moved our $1 million mark with a $320,000 tax payment. Now we moved that net income down to $300,000. That already is a huge amount of tax savings, but we're not done yet because we got one more expense. Remember, when we set this up, the trust is the a 90% limited partner in that LLC,
Hmm.
limited member. So we have $300,000 left. That means the trust needs to get 90% of that for its position in the trust and in the LLC, right?
Yeah.
So 90% of 300,000 is $270,000. That's going to go over to the trust as a K1 distribution for the trust equity position. Okay.
And you basically keep the $30,000. Technically in the IRS, they see that you're making $30,000.
Your official income for the year, net income is $30,000 in your LLC.
Wow.
Okay. So now you're probably thinking to yourself, okay, yeah, but what about the $970,000 in the trust? You got to pay taxes on that. I mean, what are you, a dumbass? It's like, I am, but that's not the issue. uh, any passive income that comes into this trust, um, if you as the trustee declare it an extraordinary dividend for the trust in compliance with IRS code 643B, then this is not considered a taxable event for the trust. So a lease payment is passive income for the trust. A K1 distribution is passive income for the trust. So therefore, when your trust, your trust has an EIN number.
Yeah.
Trust files a 1041 every year. Okay. But as trustee, remember your discretionary, it's a discretionary trust. As trustee, you have the discretion and literally on your tax return, when you had that $970,000, you write in, your accountant will have you write in extraordinary dividend. No tax, deferred permanently. So now you've brought down your tax, your pre-tax and income on your LLC down to 30,000, which come on, you're not going to pay taxes on that, right? If you do,
Yeah.
it's very little. Your trust is now this income to the trust has now been declared an extraordinary dividend in accordance with IRS code 643. No taxes are going out of that. It stays inside your trust. You just say $320,000.
Wow. Now, what about the money that, okay, let's say the person's like, oh, how do I put that in my pocket? Is it just in the trust or is it always going to be?
It has to stay in the trust.
Mhm.
However, almost I would say close to 90% of what you do can be considered a trust expense. As trustee, you open up a bank account, you got the trust checkbook, you got the trust debit card or whatever. If it's a trust expense, then the trust pays for it.
Yeah.
So you don't have very much in the way of expenses. You don't need cash as much as you think with this strategy. If you do, there's a couple ways you can do this. If you have assets that you sold into the trust,
Mhm.
then you sold them, but you didn't get money for them. The trust gives you what we call a demand note or a promissory note. Okay. So if let's say you residence, any other assets you may have, your intellectual property we talked about, if you're going to basically give them it's a purchase agreement. Okay.
Mhm.
So the trust says, okay, we're going to pay you, let's say $500,000 for all of that, but we're not going to give you cash. We're going to give you a note, and we owe you this money.
Yeah.
So whenever you want, as long as there's money in the trust bank account to cover it, you can say to the trust, okay, you know what? I need 20 grand because for whatever I need cash for whatever that the trust won't pay for as a trust expense.
Hmm.
So the trust will cut you a check for $20,000. All that does is that reduces your demand note from say 500,000 down to $480,000. And oh, by the way, that $20,000 you're taking, not a taxable event. You don't pay taxes on it.
Now, when you
Inside
say
the risk.
controlling the trust, like, so do you have full control of the trust or is there someone around that has,
You are the trustee. It's 100%.
so you're basically writing an IOU to yourself
The trust,
and
not you. The trust does.
the
Remember,
trust does, yes.
it's a separate entity. You are a trustee. You manage the trust, but
Hmm.
it's not your money. It's a trust money. So there's no conflict of interest here. I mean, you sold your assets to the trust. The trust now owes you, the former owner of these assets, money. So as the former owner, you're perfectly within your rights to want a payment whenever you
Now,
want.
when you say selling to your trust, can you just do a transfer of deed and sell it for like I don't know, like $1 or anything? So, but yet,
Well, you can if you want, but why would you want to do that? Because you just don't want to you don't want to sell it at a price that would trigger a capital gains event. Like for
okay,
example, okay, let's say that I had crypto. Okay, let's say before the crash. So let's say that I bought the crypto um, for $500,000. Okay, now it may be worth $800,000 now. Doesn't matter. The price that you acquired it at, that's the price that's being sold to the trust.
okay,
So therefore, there's no profit being done. So there's no capital gains. Okay. If you bought an investment property, let's say you were doing Airbnb and you bought the property for $300,000, it's now worth $400,000. Okay, so your price is $300,000, the cost basis price of whatever you bought it at minus any depreciation you might have taken. Okay,
mhm,
so that's the price that's on the bill of sale on the and that's what the trust owes you that, and so you can take the withdrawal from your demand note or your promissory note whenever you want. Again, as long as the trust has the money to cover it.
gotcha. So you're basically writing a note to yourself and at the price that you bought it at, and uh
Not to yourself, to the
to the
trust.
trust. Yeah, I keep messing that up because I know you own the trust and you own yourself.
You don't own the trust. I don't own the trust.
Who
I
then
manage it.
manage it? Yes.
Trust itself is its own entity.
Okay.
You gotta wrap your head around that, okay? Because it's not my trust.
Okay.
I am the trustee of it. I control everything as trustee. I don't own it. The trust owns it.
Mm. Wordplay right there. Okay. I
It's
like it.
not, it's important. It's important to
It
know this
is.
because people can't, because like it's not my trust. I mean, I get sometimes I slip into that too. It's not. Understand that it's its own entity. That's why you get the tax advantages because it's not an alter ego of me. If IRS thought that it was an alter ego of me, they would say no discounts. You can't. You're not going to save any money. Pay your money, right?
Mhm.
So because the trust is its own entity, you control it, but you don't own it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Nice. Uh, and how would you count on to you said your inner intellectual asset. How would you write that off? I never heard of that. That's the first time.
Well, I mean, you don't write it off. I mean, you're just selling it. You're establishing a value for it, and you're selling it to the trust. Okay. So, I mean, how much money have I made with short sales and my ability to get discounts? Millions. You know, I didn't put millions on there, but I did put a number on there that I felt was fair,
Hmm.
that reflected the value that it gives me as a and what because I mean it's one of the biggest reasons why I made money is because I know how to negotiate with the banks. I know how to get discounts, which equals profit. So obviously in conjunction with your accountant, and obviously we can advise you on that as well, as far as establishing the value for it. Everybody's different, but it's not like you want to say, well, I, I'm really good at negotiating, so I'm going to say that it's $1 million. You got to back it up with something, right?
Yeah.
You know, you just can't throw numbers out there and just say, okay, I'm all right. All my intellectual assets, $10 million. Give me my money. It doesn't work that way. Let's be reasonable.
Yeah. And is there any like paperwork that you have to work? It's like a certain paperwork that deals with inner asset.
Yeah, it's all yeah. It's anybody that invests in a trust with us. We go through all of that. You have the bill of sale, the note, assignment of notes, things like that. It's all there. So
Okay.
we hold your hand and walk you through how that works.
Nice. And since you have okay, this is how I see it. You have a trust, right? And
Yep.
you're all the way over here. You're like over here, nothing's going on, right? You're the trust and the trust owns the LLC.
No,
They don't
it does
own the
not.
LLC.
No, the
Okay.
trust cannot own a business. The LLC is a separate entity. Okay.
Yes.
Remember, it has to be a separate entity because the trust has to have 90% limited partnership in it. If it has full partnership, it won't work. It has to be a limited partnership. Even though it's 90%, it's still a limited partnership or a limited member of
Hmm.
the LLC. Okay. So these are two separate entities. And the lease has to be between the trust and the LLC.
Okay.
Otherwise, those two expenses won't work.
Gotcha. So everything is just separated from each other. They just do business with each other. Okay.
Exactly.
Wow.
Exactly.
Okay. And
Yeah.
now, what about what's your best advice for someone that that's like, oh my God, this is so like they're hearing this, like their mind is getting blown out, and they're like, whoa, I can save money, I can do all this, but I have a W-2. What would you recommend for someone getting out of the W-2? Uh,
Well, the easiest thing to do, and this works more than you think, is go to your employer and ask if they can change you to 1099.
mm,
A lot of companies will do it because they save money anyway on that. They don't have as much money they're having to expend with like they do with W-2 employees. Some won't, but I mean, very minimum, if that's if that would work the simplest. If not, then some people don't have the mentality to be an entrepreneur. I mean, it takes a lot of cojones to do it, right? I mean,
yeah,
because you don't have that security. And I look at that as, I don't want anyone to make irresponsible decisions. That, okay, well, I'm getting all excited about this, so I'm just going to go ahead and quit my job and start doing something. I would never do that. What I would say is start a side hustle and develop it. And as soon as your side hustle makes as much or more than what you're making with W-2, then make the break. But I would never tell anyone to, quit their job until they have enough income to, um, at least be equal to what they're giving up in their salary.
yeah, definitely agree. And
Yeah.
what is a mistake that you see a lot of entrepreneurs making? Uh, other than the whole tax part, they're like, they're getting taxed the crap out of. What other mistakes do you see them making in their whole business?
Not having a structure.
Mm,
And listen, I can't tell you how having a good CPA has helped me over the years, even before I learned about the trust. And making sure that you have competent people on your team. So for me, when I got started, I was just flying by the seat of my pants. Most entrepreneurs do that; they fly by the seat of their pants. And so I was fortunate that when I knew, I mean, I was in my 30s, so I had learned something in life. Let's put it that way. Right? So I wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'm just gonna whatever, And I've talked to people who did that when they're younger. Make sure you have competent advisors. So when I decided that short sales were what I wanted to do, before I did anything with this, I looked for a broker because I needed a broker because the bank will not allow anyone to do a short sale unless the property's listed. But it had to be a good broker. It had to be someone who fit I knew that I didn't want it to be somebody who was corporate, like with a, Wells, I'm sorry, like Coldwell Banker, these chain, Watson, Exit Realty, EXP, these chain brokerages. I didn't want that.
hmm
I wanted someone who was also a businessman and or businesswoman, and also preferably who invested.
yeah.
And I found a very good way to do that. I played tennis. I just started asking people I knew and and I was a big tennis player at the time. I just started asking them, "Hey, does anybody know any brokers?" And the guy said, "Yeah, Pat's a broker." And I said, "Hey, let's go play some tennis." And we played a match, and then we went out to dinner or lunch after that, and we were just talking. I said, "Look, this is what I want to do. I need a broker. I know you're an investor. They bought houses at the auction." And so he said, "Yeah, I think that would be pretty interesting. Why don't we do this?" And so was like, wow, okay. So then he was able to give me much needed credibility as well as knowledge on the real estate side of it as a broker. And so he became part of my team. And then I did not want to do a title company, have work with a title company because they're too corporate, they're too inflexible. And so he said, listen, I know an attorney that could do the closings for you and all this stuff. Why don't we talk to him? And I tell you what, I walked to this guy's office. He had you ever see a person that has like a wandering eye?
Wandering eye, yes.
Yeah, it freaked me out because the guy he's like 6'6". He's a tall guy. I'm only 5'11". No, not 5'10". I guess 5'9" now. I've shrunk, but it was just like I couldn't tell if he was focusing on me or somebody else. It was really weird, but And he talked with this he's from this deep South. He goes, well, I guess I can help you. I mean, I don't like the goddamn banks. That's how we talked, you know? And so I learned how to imitate him really well. And so my biggest challenge the next 15 years was to not talk like him to him.
Yeah.
'Cause that would be a full on, hi Charles. Anyway, but he was an attorney, he had
Yeah.
credibility. And what was most important for me is that he didn't charge me up front.
Mm,
I could do title searches and he maybe pay him on the back end, not the front end. So he was much more flexible with me. And so I was able to build a core group of professional advisors that knew their stuff. So I could focus on what I knew, which was how to talk to, how to find people in foreclosure, how to talk to them, how to convince them to trust me to do the short sale for them to try to buy their house, and then obviously I could negotiate. I would negotiate personally. The broker would, but I taught him how to do it, and then we had a great team. So don't the biggest mistake, to answer your question, that was a long roundabout way of getting to this answer, is that when you try to do everything yourself and you don't start off with a team, try to find a team at the beginning.
yeah. And what would be the best way to vet people? Because I know I have my fair share of like finding a CPA and either I didn't like their vibe or I didn't like the way that they're doing business, right? Well, what's your best way of like saying, okay, this person is pretty competent and this person knows what they're doing and they're not really bullshitting?
It depends on what you want to do. Now, for example, the guy that my CPA, I did an exhaustive survey of CPAs. When I say exhaustive, I meant that the guy had a office across the tennis club where I used to play tennis, and I saw a sign saying he was a CPA, so I went and knocked on his door, and that's how I. But we worked 18 years really, really well together. I just happened to get lucky, I guess. But I would say now, see, we're having issues now because he doesn't know about the trust and doesn't really want to work with the trust.
Yeah,
And so, you know, if I already had that in my strategy at the time that I was going to run my business in conjunction with a trust to get this tax savings, and if he had told me that, I don't really want to fool with that, then I wouldn't have gone with him. So 35-year-old Don was grateful to have him, and he did a great job for me. But 58-year-old Don would say, I can't work with you. I got to find someone who's experienced in, I got to ask around, network until I find someone, that has some experience with this trust.
mm,
So whatever it is that you need to have experience with, and that you just have to I mean, I say always use your network first, because word of mouth and referrals are always the best way to go than trying to go cold.
of
Always.
course. Yeah. Because I know like whenever I ask somebody like, hey, who's a good attorney that you use, right? They're like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I use this person all the time. And they want to take a little bit of the credit. So like whenever like it's like a good referral, right? Like, oh, I sent this person your way, you know what I mean? So that just mention they'll be like, hey, just mention that I sent you, right?
Right.
And it's gonna be like, oh, okay, he's trying to get like a little good deed out of it. And another thing is since you have all the people in place, you have the who's, right?
Yeah.
Uh what systems do you have in place as well? Like, hey, what is my contingency plan, or what is like some ways that you make it like automative in a way, like for or not just you, but that you see other business people since you consult them, like, hey, uh, you should probably automate this, or you should probably have these systems in place. What are some of that?
Well, I would say that before you build a system, you have to know what your highest and best use is. And for me, it's what I'm doing right now, talking to people, teaching, making contacts, and so forth. That's what I want to do. Anything besides that is stopping, or not stopping, but it's slowing down my growth. So I need to build an infrastructure of support around that. Obviously, it has to cash flow, right? So you're forced to do most of the stuff when you start yourself, when
Mm-hmm.
you start out. I mean, unless you have, parents or a benefactor that's willing to give you up startup money, you're going to have to do a lot of stuff on your own. And
Oh yeah.
so that's just part of it, right? But your goal should be by a certain time frame, I only want to be doing income producing activity, and that's it.
Yeah.
Right. So everything else has to be a support. And as you get better, and you get more revenue in, then you can go ahead and dedicate, more of that revenue to setting these systems up. But just to give you an example, I know that uh, my biggest source up to this point, my biggest source of clients has been from social media, YouTube, social media, my podcast, and also doing podcast interviews. And I also know that I'm leaving a lot on the table because I don't have a systematic system in place to get this in front of people like I should. And so, sometimes things come up that are just, it's like serendipity. And you think, okay, if you, I don't want to sound too metaphysical because I hate people who talk about manifestation and all this stuff. And,
Yeah.
and I, first of all, I keep repeating this because I've been around a long time, and, you know, I think that people go overboard on that stuff. I really do. And I have a very close friend of mine who works with me, and she's constantly telling me to manifest and constantly telling me, okay, imagine what color socks are gonna, this person's gonna have on when he meets you and gets you that check of $100,000 and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, but there's an underlying idea sometimes that is like, if something doesn't work out, you just didn't manifest it enough. You weren't positive enough.
Hmm.
It's like, I can be the most positive manifesting person in the world, but people have free will, and sometimes they just say no, you know? And so you get, people get trapped in that sometimes. And I think it can be a little bit destructive, especially with a personality like I do, where I tend to put a lot of blame on myself anyway. It's like, oh man, if I would have manifested better, it would have worked out. It's like, no, it doesn't work that way. People make their choices. All you can do is do the best you can to get it in front of them, explain it to them, and ultimately they're going to say yes or no. And
Yeah.
you're still going to get more no's than you're going to get yeses. Okay. But having said that, you know, um, you do need to put yourself in a position to succeed. It's a numbers game, so you want to get this in front of as many people as possible. So and I would say this also as well, when you're building something, if you're constantly doing positive action, you're in the flow. What does it say? A body at rest stays at rest. A body in motion tends to stay in motion.
Yeah.
That's the way it is when you're developing a business. If you're not constantly moving forward, then you're not going to find opportunities if you're just sitting doing nothing or not doing as much as you should. I have found, as I built my real estate investing business, as I'm building this business, the principle is the same. Opportunities will find you when you put yourself out there.
Yes.
I had a situation like that where, and maybe this is manifestation, maybe this is part of it. I don't know. But I guess it was in late August, I said, you know what? This is all well and good. I'm getting leads and so forth on social media and YouTube and so forth, but I need to do some. I need to do something else. I need to get this in front of more people. And within a month, I had a software guy reach out to me and he says, "Listen, I'm putting this a beta thing out right now, and I'd love for you to be involved in this." I said, "Oh, sure. Well, what is it?" And he explained to me how he is able to go into LinkedIn groups and Facebook groups, and he can basically scrape, the personal email addresses and phone numbers of people in those groups we can target for who would fit our ideal client avatar. And so I said, "This is interesting." And so uh, I, I don't want to say I'm cheap, but I kind of am cheap a little bit. I don't like to spend a lot of money unless I can work a deal. Um, so I have a guy that I've been working with in real estate. He was helping me build my short sale business, and he works with a number of real estate gurus. He does a lot of their marketing for them. And he's got me on a lot of podcasts. He's been great. He's been really supportive. And so I said, this guy's name's Patrick. So I said, "Patrick, let's talk." So we set up a Zoom, and I said, "I just want your advice. This is what I have. What do you think?" And his eyes were like, "You can get that?" I said, "Yeah." And he says, "Oh, that's great." So I set up an interview with me and the software guy, and we went through this. And then he told me, and Patrick said afterwards, he says, "Yes, this is really going to be good for you. So I said, how about do we do a deal? I said, because with this guy, he's willing to have, I can have one person with me. If I make you my person, and I don't care if you use this for the other clients, but I want you to do my stuff for free. He said, done. So now he's got his marketing. Now I've got him working for me, doing that, getting those, building the email campaigns, building the marketing to get this out in all these Facebook groups and LinkedIn groups to get this in front of them, and it doesn't cost me a dime.
Wow.
You know, so you can always find creative solutions if you're open to them and you're in motion.
Yeah.
The biggest thing is stay in motion.
Uh,
So
for that, I have like this little analogy or whatever.
yeah,
It's I always like to say this a lot. I'm a big, believer in God, and but a lot of people they'll say, "Oh, it's just luck or it's the universe or whatever," right? For me, it's like, okay, how I see is that God's up there, he's a little bored, right? And he's like, ah, man, we have. Yeah, I always tell people like, yeah, he's hearing you, but he's not listening to you. So I have all these family members are always praying, right? They want to get that $1 million. They want to get all this. I'm like, listen, he's hearing you, but he's not. He doesn't want to sit there and listen to you. He's really bored up there. But then he sees me, Fabian Alam, or they see Dohn Thornton, and they're like, oh, this guy's a little interesting. He's actually, oh, okay. He wants to be a millionaire, right? Yeah, he prays to me and everything, but he's doing the things. You know what? Let me sprinkle some little luck on him. Let's see what he'll get, right? So that's how I see it. Like, oh, people are gonna come to you. They're like, oh, wow, man, you're so lucky you got this. Well, I'm putting in the work and I'm putting myself in the right situation. And there's I forgot where I heard the phrase from, but like maybe that one decision that you made cost you to not be a billionaire or cost you to not be a millionaire, right?
yep,
So every choice that you make can lead to you to a certain destination. You just got to figure out. Like you said, you got to move. How I see it, when you say it, you got to be in motion. I see it as like a chessboard, right? You got to keep on playing
yeah,
if you want to beat the game or if you want to win at all. Now, a lot of people are wondering, okay, like Don, like I get it, all right. I'm an officer, or I I'm a firefighter, or I'm a teacher or whatever, right? A W-2. Uh,
right,
but I want to start a business.
right.
What like do I need to like my business to start a business, or what kind of business should I make? Uh, that you've seen, like, oh, just because I like food, do I need to open up a food truck now? Like, how does that work?
Start small, practice, start small, and you'd be surprised what happens when you, because you have to learn things. Uh, it took me 2 years to get my first closing when I decided I want to be in real estate.
Mm,
2 years, okay, and you have to, and I did different things before I broke through, and go into it knowing. I mean, look, sometimes fairy dust comes on you and you hit it big quick,
yeah.
right? I mean, when I was talking about the movie cameras in Russia, literally I was working for a company. It was a Polaroid back. Remember, I don't know, for you young kids out there, Polaroid was when you could take a picture and it would come out and it would develop in front of you, right?
You just like toss it
It
around and you
was it
get it.
was 70s technology of digital cameras. Okay. Anyway, so Polaroid had a joint venture with the Atomic Ministry of Russia, and I just got hired because I was an American citizen who spoke fluent Russian.
Mhm.
So, but I was in charge of making sure that all the supplies that were coming in from different parts of the world came into Russia, got through credit customs. They were assembled and they would ship them out to be sold. Okay, that was my job. Well, one day a guy walks in and wants to talk to me because he worked with UPS and he wanted us to switch from DHL to UPS.
Mhm.
Well, I was like, okay, sure, let's chat. And he let slip, yeah, I know some guy that bought some 60 millimeter movie cameras. Now he's selling them for $400 in America. And I said, really? That's all it took. So he dropped that little nugget in my brain.
Yeah.
I did some research. I found them. I found the cameras, and I took action. And I already told you the story. But I worked for that was basically a W-2 job.
Yeah.
And so I heard about it. I could see that, okay, yeah, buy it for 11, sell it for 400. That's pretty good margin,
Mhm.
right? And what I didn't know was that, could I sell them at that price? But I figured this guy is, so I must be able to do it. I must be able to find the same people or whatever. So I had a a good idea of I had a concept. I didn't have it worked out yet. I just was flying by the seat of my pants. But I'm bringing it back around to this just to say that sometimes these things come to you. And if you remember, now think about this. This happened to me when I was in my mid 20s. Okay. Now, am I selling movie cameras now? No. But it got me on my journey.
Yeah.
You never know where, listen, the 2 years when I didn't see my family, when I left them in Moscow, I went to Orlando. I mean, my son was just a toddler, and he was having health issues and so forth. I didn't see anybody for 2 years. So it was hard for me to do that. And it was so discouraging and it was so depressing. And I felt like that I just kept beating my head against the wall. Everything I tried wasn't working. I tried to be a real estate agent. I tried to be a mortgage broker. I tried to be an investor in different things and nothing worked. And so I thought to myself, gosh, was I born under a bad sign? I mean, why can't I break through? But the funny thing is that in summer of 2004, when I'd already made in like 4 months, I made like, I don't know, 400, $500,000. And I looked, I don't know what it was. I had one night of clarity and I couldn't sleep. And it was almost like I was on this, I could look back in time. Everything that happened to get me where I was had to happen.
Hmm.
You take one thing away, I don't get where I'm at. And that's why the challenge that we have as entrepreneurs is we don't know where we're going. We have an idea where we want to go, but we don't know where we're at in the journey. Once I reached it and I looked back, I could see how every single point was exactly what I had to go through. But you don't see it until you're there, until you look back. And so what keeps you going? Faith. The faith that and your determination that I'm not going to quit. Now, I'm not saying that you stay married to a bad idea. You've got to be flexible.
Hmm.
But overall, I knew that I wanted to be a real estate investor and I wanted to do this is what I wanted to do at the time. And I just didn't know how yet. If you're in motion and you're determined that you're going to stick it out, and the universe, however you want to call it, the real estate gods, whatever you want to say to yourself, okay, usually they test you. Usually
Yes.
they were determined to they want to see if you're worthy or not. And I don't know anybody that has stuff handed to them on a silver platter. And if they do, they piss it away usually because they don't value it, right? So it took me 2 years to get that place. And then once I got through, once I passed the test, once I basically completed my apprenticeship, if you want to call it that, like a rocket, you know? So that's been my experience. And it's the same thing that I've been seeing with when I've been developing this project. It's the same thing, you know? A guy that I had met 2 years previously
Hmm.
who wanted to be involved in my short sale business, you know? And it didn't work out. He decided to do something else or whatever. We circled at exactly the right time. He reached out to me and invited me to dinner and he told me about this. And next thing you know, boom, I pivoted. And that's another thing. You got to be ready to pivot. When something comes along, pivot that you like, and you do your due diligence, of course. I'm not saying go off half cocked, but when you say yes, this is what I want. This is a good opportunity. Pivot, go. And listen, my wife, my mother-in-law, oh my God, my Russian mother-in-law, even my kids, they all were against this move. They said, why are you shitting on a business that's been feeding us for 20 years?" I said, because it's not going to be feeding us in 10 months. I said, by the end of the year, there's not going to be any money left.
Yeah.
There's just no short sales. Everybody has equity. They're not upside down their mortgages. See, I knew and they didn't. And so I had to just, you know, I got to the point where I actually said, look, I'm not going to talk to you guys for a while. I got to stay focused, you
Yeah.
know? And so when you pivot, you got to commit and you got to go for it and just do whatever it takes, to and make minor course corrections if you have to, but stay on it. And again, after a certain amount of time that you need to learn, figure out what works, but just stay in motion, then it will break through. And like it has been with me right now. I mean, I've made some amazing contacts, alliances, people working with me now, bringing me business, and if I just hadn't taken the plunge and committed and gone, I went to a, I went to an event in Vegas. Okay. I didn't have much money. I still had miles left from my Sky Miles account, so I got a free ticket there. I used my Sky Miles basically for everything. You know, I had maybe $300 budget. I went to this capital raising fund with all these millionaires there. I didn't, I and I hardly knew anything about this thing at all. I just started talking. I just started talking. I just started talking. I just started talking. And what I didn't get one client from that thing, not one. Okay.
Hmm.
But what it gave me was the confidence that these millionaires didn't know about this. And they were interested talking to some guy who obviously was full of shit and didn't know what I was talking about yet, but I knew enough. And I thought, this is a business. This is a business. So, you know,
Man, you gotta, because when you said like, hey, you basically tossed away, not tossed away, but you told your whole family like, listen, I can't listen to you guys. I gotta
no.
put you guys away. That reminds me of the Stephen King book, like, hey, because how to write a book, right? It's like
Yeah.
he says like, listen, if you're gonna write a book, don't tell anybody of your story. Finish it first, and then you could probably like ask because if you're writing it midway and you give it to someone and someone tells you shit,
Yeah.
it's your whole mindset changes. Like, oh, maybe I am shit or something, right? It's like someone judging your paint while you're making it, and you're like, you're not even at the end, and they're like, oh, this looks bad. But I mean, if if you have like you said, like they're not negative people because they're your family. They just want to see the best of you.
Well, they're
Uh,
negative.
yeah, they can be negative. Yeah, I didn't want to say. I do.
Let's be
They're
real here. A lot of them are negative.
yes, they are. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, they are negative, and they will. And you can't. I guess you can choose and not choose who your family. But like, if you're in one of those families where they're like, they always want to be one together. I know my family is, and some of them they're kind of very judgmental. They're like, oh, you shouldn't do that. You should be a doctor or whatever. I'm like, nah. But you will have those people that are just vampires in your life,
Yes.
and they just want to tell you like, hey, this is bad, is negative. And I've always been told like, hey, you're a walking mirror, right?
Mhm.
May just and this is usually an analogy towards peers, right?
Mhm.
Because if you're a walking mirror and you have cousins or friends, they look at you like, oh my God, Don, you're doing great. Or they know that you're doing good, but they'll like pull out like some nitpicky stuff about you. Like, hey, maybe remember that time where you lost all that money?
Oh my
They're
gosh.
gonna they're gonna say stuff like that, and you're like, listen, I'm a changing human being, and I'm going like that's why I always tell people like, listen, if you have old friends, not let them go, but spend less time with them, right? Because they know the old version of you, and that's why I say like people that have high school friends or whatever, I'm like, listen, just let them go. You gotta kind of figure out yourself, figure out the world by going forward. And do you have a story with that? Where you were like, oh man, people were telling you,
Oh, listen, um, in 2018, and my business was still going well. No, there was no issues with that. But I had a guy that was a short sale guru. I bought a course from him back in 2009 or eight, I think it was. And he came to me and said, "Listen, man, you gotta get on this deal. I mean, it's like there's this thing coming out. It's a ground floor. I'm like a 300th person, and it's about this HGH gel. It's this homeopathic HGH gel. Come in with me. You're gonna make a ton of money." And of course, it was MLM. And it's the first time I had done MLM, and I thought, okay, sure, it's a ground floor opportunity. I'm in my 50s. I thought, sure, I need some boost. I don't mind HGH. Why not, right? So
yeah,
$150 to start or whatever. and I did really well at it. I did really well at it. To my shock, I did well at it. But then the company couldn't keep up its production, and we went like 6 months without having any product. So
Wow.
it's like, and so then of course everybody, the team I built left, and then it was just like I said, okay, that's it. I heard about that every single time. Well, what about the gel? Remember the gel? What about the gel? I mean, if I had a dollar every time I heard my family say, "What about the gel?" Well, you said that's what you said about the gel. You know, with this project, all I heard was, "Oh, it's the gel again." Why are you doing the gel again? I said, "I'm not doing the gel again." It doesn't, again, just do real estate. So the real estate's not working. You know, I can see that, right? I thought to myself, you have to be a little bit cruel sometimes.
Yes.
I didn't say this to my family. But I had to sit down and say, okay, let me see who's telling me I shouldn't do this. My 18-year-old son, who's never accomplished a damn thing in his life except play soccer. Okay, he's telling me that. My daughter who has a degree that is useless. She's very smart,
Yeah.
but she's never done a damn thing in her life. My wife, whose sole accomplishment professionally was she worked for 9 months as an inbound telemarketing customer service person for Herbalife, multiple marketers in Moscow. Okay, my mother-in-law was an accountant for a Soviet, you know, government agency, and then a cooperative, which is like the precursor to the capitalist system that came in. I mean, myself, what the flying F do they know about how to build a business?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, they couldn't find their business building ass with both hands. They couldn't do it. Why am I listening to these people who don't know what they're talking about? Other than the fact that they're my family and I sleep with one of them, right?
Yeah.
So I thought to myself, I'm not listening to those people try to tell me what I should or shouldn't do. They haven't built anything. I'm Dohn frickin' Thornton, the short sale guy. I built a multi-million-dollar short sale business from nothing. You know, with no experience whatsoever. I took a 3 cameras or how many 5 cameras in my bag, and I flew to Los Angeles and started going to film schools. And that business lasted. I mean, was really popular for 5 years. I'm going to trust me, and that was a difference. And I wasn't mean to them. I just told my wife, I said, you know what? I said, I'm just going to have to stop communicating for a while.
Mhm.
I'm not I'm not abandoning you guys. I need to take a break. So here's the deal. Here's the ground rules. We'll talk. It's fine. But the minute you start talking negative about what I'm doing, I'm hanging up. And if you text me this stuff, I'm blocking you.
Mhm.
And it caused some
Friction.
friction, and it caused a lot of hurt feelings. But I know they know that I'm committed to them, and they know that I'm building something, and I know they're hoping it works out. Because now I told myself, look, it doesn't matter anymore. It's this or nothing. And so now they're seeing the success starting, and now they're coming back around. But I had to set those boundaries. And
Yeah.
if you don't set those boundaries, you're screwed. Because the negativity will get you, because especially when you're beginning, because you don't have that confidence yet. So it's crucial that you only talk to people that believe in you and who are not energy vampires, like you said, and don't share everything with people.
Oh yeah.
Seriously, stop talking to people about what you're doing. That was a big lesson I had to learn. Stop yakking all the time about what you're doing.
Let your actions speak louder.
Yes, yes, you know.
Man, Don, that's all well said. And Pan here says, what is your biggest money loss in life, and what was your lesson learned from that?
Uh, when I was riding really high in the Great Recession, when I was making millions, I had my tennis pro told me that there was this tennis club for sale,
Mhm.
and I should buy it. He'd run it for me, and he had a great. I mean, I saw he had lots of people. He was loved. He ran this club in Orlando, and I thought to myself, hey, why not? Right? You know, I'm rich. I got money. So I didn't. I thought what I thought. I always want. I thought the idea of me having my own tennis club would be amazing, and it blinded me to the reality. I didn't treat it as a business. If I had, I would have realized that the club. I mean, it's not in Orlando. It was 50 miles away in Orlando,
Yeah.
in kind of a podunk area out in the sticks a little bit. You know, there wasn't as big. I mean, rednecks don't play tennis that much. Let's put it that way. Okay, right?
Yeah.
And it was in bad shape. It was a clay court, so I had to spend a lot of money getting the new clay in and getting everything done. And you know, the golf club that was selling it was going out of business. That should have been my first clue that maybe that wouldn't be a good investment. You know, but I just plopped down $400,000 on that thing,
Shit.
and I got it worked up really well. And then about 2011, you know, the all the easy money from the short sales were going. The banks had finally started figuring out they were just bleeding money, so they started making things much more difficult, and I had to adjust. It was about a 2 year time before. I mean, I was always making money, but I wasn't making that kind of money anymore. So I had to, you know, you had to, you know, it was like a dance. The bank makes a change. You got to figure out how to get around it. And so we had about a year and a half where, you know, our cash flow wasn't as good as it was. Meanwhile, I put a lot of my available cash into it, you know, into this project, and it wasn't producing money, and it was a cash suck as well. And so, long story short, within 5 years, I had to sell it, and I lost my shirt on
Mhm.
it. So, what was my the lesson I learned from that? Don't be a dumbass, and don't do any vanity projects. Right? I mean, it was a vanity project, and it was stupid because I had no business trying to run a tennis club. I was already running a real estate investing business.
Yeah.
That's what I knew. I didn't know anything about running. I knew how to win tennis matches and play amateur tournaments and get better at tennis. I did not know how to run a tennis club, and I realized all too soon that it was a stupid mistake. And so the lesson learned was that I will focus on what I know and what I'm passionate about, and what I can drive myself. I'm driving the bus here, right?
Yeah.
No more. And don't trust anybody except myself when it comes to those kind of decisions.
Nice. Uh, with that, I always say use facts over feelings all the time.
Yeah,
And right now we can get into the ending questions here.
sure.
Uh, so Don, if you can go back in time and tell your younger self something, what would it be?
Don't go to Russia.
Really?
No, I'd still go.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. It's. I chose a hard life because you know it's hard to have a family going back and forth. And for the last 20 years, 18 years, I've spent a lot of my time on airplanes going back and forth. And I mean, I love my wife, I love my family. It's just that I only see him 20% of the time. That was a hard thing. We didn't choose that. It just my son got sick, and that's kind of the way it worked out.
Mhm.
But no, I would say that's an interesting question because I look back now and almost everything that I got here for a reason. And you get here, the road you're on is you know you can't dissect the bad stuff from the good stuff because in some ways the bad stuff is crucial to your growth, right? You have to go through these things to get where you want to be. I would say that the biggest mistake that I made was tying my self-esteem to too many people, and I was way too open
Mhm.
with stuff that I was doing. I was way too open with my feelings. I didn't keep things close enough to my chest. And what you don't realize, if you, I have a very good heart, and I've been burned a lot because I've been too open and too trusting, and I didn't realize that people will use your openness against you, and they will try to manipulate you to get what they want. And so it's very important to have a very, very close circle of people that you trust. And you know what? I joke about my Russian family a lot, but they got my back. And my wife, I met my wife when I didn't have anything, and I left her for 2 years, and she had to rely on her parents to take support her and her two kids, and she didn't dump me, didn't cheat on me, you know, and she helped bring my son get his health problems done, and that was not just a 1 year thing, and so you know uh, they're they're my they're my rock as
Yeah.
far as stuff goes, and I'm telling you, I since this journey started, I no longer talk to my two sisters. I no longer talk to my brother.
Mm,
Probably never will because money changes people, and people, you find out who people really are. And so I could have mitigated a lot of that if I had just been less open and more closed with my thoughts. I wanted to share too much, and don't do that. Keep everything close to your chest.
nice. And what question would you like to ask your future self?
My future self is, where am I going to live? I don't know right now. I'm not going back to Russia with the war and everything. I'm not going to stay in the States. I speak Finnish, I speak German, I speak Russian. I don't want to be. I want to be out. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. I'd like to see where I'm going to be in 3 years.
Okay.
I know where I want to be. Whether that will change, I don't know. But that's my plan right now. Is I know where I have a plan. But how long is it going to take me to get there? That kind of stuff. But honestly, I don't think that way anymore.
Hmm.
I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to do tomorrow, and I know I got a general plan of what I'm going to do till the end of the year. And then I'm more open to stuff and see how things develop. So I don't think too far ahead anymore. I just focus on what I can do right now.
Nice. And what do you think the secret sauce is into being successful?
Don't quit.
Don't quit. Love that.
90% of it's just don't quit.
And do you have a quote that you live by?
It's not a quote. Um, it's the story in Think and Grow Rich. I'm sure you read that book, right? Almost everybody has.
Honestly, I
You have
have
not?
not. I have not read Drink Thinking. That's the only book
Boy,
because
I
I,
should have vetted you better before I came on your
no,
podcast.
listen. The only reason I haven't read that is because I read a book called Three Simple Steps, and it told me that it kind of like uh downplayed Napoleon Hill, where it was like, I mean, I read his book Outwitting the Devil, but I've never read his because he tells like he got rich off of that book. He never got rich before that. So
Right.
I'm like, okay, this guy
That was
maybe,
his
maybe
that was
not.
his business stuff, right?
Yeah. But
But
I
we can debate Napoleon Hill's, but
yeah.
there was one part of the book that really got me was the story of this guy that had sunk all his money into a gold mine,
Yeah.
and he stopped about a foot away from a 10-20 million dollar strike
Mm,
because he got discouraged and quit, and he sold it for a song. A guy came in, kept at it, and he made the money. And of course, the guy used that as, I mean, he could have gone two ways. He could have just said, "What, I'm an idiot," and just started drinking heavily or whatever. But he used that as motivation to say, "Okay, I'm not going to make that mistake again." And he became one of the best, the richest life insurance agent back in the 30s, whenever it was. But for me, it was just, you know, I never want to stop a foot away.
hmm.
So keep going. When I started this business, I knew that I would not stop until I succeeded.
You know,
So when you
Don,
have that ironclad commitment that I will stop when I'm dead, or when I have it working so well that I can set up to be mostly automated, and then that's when I'll change. But right now, I will do nothing except this.
Don, this is the quote that my company goes by. Do you
Yeah,
see it at all? It's
I
like,
do. Yes, keep
keep,
moving forward.
yep, always
Mhm.
that, like you said, always take that step forward. It's gonna suck, but you just gotta keep moving forward, and you'll see some battles, you see some wars,
Yeah,
but at the end of the day, you'll get closer to your destination.
yeah.
And uh, before we move on to the last two questions, is there any books or courses or whatever you would recommend to people? You seem a big reader yourself.
I used to be, not so much anymore. I'll be honest
Okay.
with you. I don't read as much as I used to because I focus when I get involved in building a business, that consumes me.
Yeah.
So anything I read is research to help me get better at what I'm doing. So I can't really tell you that. I mean, if you go back to regrets, I think that one of the biggest things that I wish I had learned early was like Og Mandino's The Greatest Salesman Ever, whatever that thing's called. And I like the fact that the principles in there really are good. If I learned those earlier in life, maybe I wouldn't have taken until my mid 30s before I got where I was at. Who knows?
Hmm.
Maybe not. But that's an excellent tutorial to get started. If I'm gonna build a business, I want to build it with those principles.
Okay. And what was that book called again? Is
It's
greatest
Og Mandino, the greatest salesman in the world, or the greatest salesman ever. I think it is OGMANDINO. Og Mandino. It's back. It was written back in the 70s.
Yeah,
So
think I have that book somewhere. I just
yeah.
haven't touched it. Uh,
Well, I
okay.
mean, as a beginner, as someone who's just getting started, as a young person, I would definitely start living by those precepts because I regret that I did not do that financially speaking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice. Any other books or courses, or would that
Right
just be
now,
all?
no, that's it right now. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. And second to last is, what would you like to tell your parents or your kids that are probably listening to this, or if they were to listen to this?
Um, I tell my daughter to get ready to travel because we're going to start traveling next year, like we used
Nice.
to. I tell my son to pull his head out and realize there's more to life than just soccer and chicks. But he's 20, so 21. So what are you
Yeah.
gonna do? No, I mean, just they know that we're going to this is about ready to pop big,
Mhm.
and no, I mean, we're good. I mean,
Nice. And finally, how can people reach out to you?
well, you can reach out to me at best by email. My name is spelled Dohn, so just Don at, and my company is HB Funding. So H is in hotel, B is in Bravo, funding, FUNDING,
Mhm.
INC.com, HBFundingInc.com.
Nice. And you said you had a podcast as well?
Yeah, it's called Don the Infinite Wealth Strategist.
Infinite Wealth Strategist. I love it. All
Mhm.
right, Don, it's been great having you here, and
Yeah, thanks for
you're
having me on. I appreciate it.
you were awesome. Appreciate it.